Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Agents of Mayhem. I played it on the Xbox One, it's also available on the PS4. So I'm gonna preface this by saying that this is made by the same team that has made Saints Row, and I'm finding it very difficult to not let my love of Saints Row bias this game. I'm gonna try my hardest in this review to not let that be a problem, but I definitely found while playing it that I definitely felt certain things because of my love for Saints Row. So firstly, Agents of Mayhem takes a bunch of kind of interesting characters, puts them on a team, and they are basically trying to fight the Legion. The Legion is a criminal organization. They're essentially a bunch of bad guys, and even the boss of the Agents of Mayhem used to be a member of the Legion. Her name is Persephone, and she's now trying to stop them. The Legion is led by a guy known as D-Babs, or Dr. Babylon is his actual name. And this game has a interesting sense of humor. It definitely takes characters from, and I have to mention it, Saints Row, and puts them in this game, and that is something I love and hate all at once. And the reason that is like playing as Johnny Gat. He's not Johnny Gat from Saints Row, he's this new version of Johnny Gat that exists for Agent of Mayhem. I mean, he still has very much the similar personality, but he's not a criminal, he was a cop. He is essentially a good guy, not a criminal. They've got a guy who's known as Kingpin. He is basically Pierce from Saints Row, and again, they made a bunch of weird changes, and those don't entirely rub me the wrong way, but all at once it is very weird for me. Supposedly, this game takes place in like the same universe as Saints Row, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels like it's more of like an alternate universe, which I'm fine with, and I actually overall like the story and the missions. The story is a little weaker than I was hoping for. It's not that it's bad, it's just a little light. Now, as for the audio in this game, I really enjoy it. I do wish there was more music in this game, especially when you're driving around the city, but when it comes to the sound effects, I think they are very well done. I definitely enjoy the voiceover work. I think the scripting is excellent. It's a very funny game. It has a lot of interesting humor to it, humor that people who have played games from this developer before would kind of recognize, and obviously that humor would fail without, like I said, the voiceover work, which I'm not going to say excellent, but it is very good, and I do think as far as the playable characters, they give them a lot of personality, and they do a good job of capturing the personality that's meant to be there. Now, in regards to the gameplay, it's mostly an open world game. You do go into what are basically dungeons. They're not really dungeons, they're like hideouts or bases of the Legion. That's kind of one of the weaker parts of the game in my opinion. This is very much a game where you need to be moving almost constantly, and in some of those bases, moving around is damn near impossible. They're very tight spaces, so moving around them the way you need to stay alive is not an easy task, and at times it's not even an accomplishable task. Now, throughout the city, which is like a futuristic version of Seoul, South Korea, there's a good amount of stuff to do, not like an insane amount, which is good because I do find some games put too much in and it gets overwhelming to the point where you're just like, no, stop, please make it stop. Maybe actually a little bit too little, but I guess I would definitely take that over too much, because when there's a game that just has too much to do, I tend to not enjoy that. And some of the stuff is kind of wacky, like stealing cars so you can get blueprints, rescuing shops, just opening new areas for yourself, or doing small things to hinder the Legion. So when you actually go out into the field with your Agents of Mayhem, you get to pick 3 of them, and out of those 3, each has their own abilities, and it's good to vary those abilities. Out of all the agents, they all have their own abilities. Some of them overlap, but it's good to pick and choose a set that is diverse. That way, if you come up against enemies that are shielded, you can break down that shielding, and then you can switch over and just do pure damage to them. Things like that. I do have some complaints with it, because some of these missions kind of suck, because like there's infinitely spawning enemies, and that kind of makes it really difficult to basically hack whatever you need to hack or chase down the vehicle you need to chase down. And I mean, it's not always infinitely respawning enemies, but it sometimes feels that way, even if there aren't. But I definitely ran into times where I killed like 100+ enemies, and they just kept coming. I was finally able to clear out an area so that I could hack the device. Or a driving mission that I took on, I was supposed to be chasing this person and basically destroying their vehicle by ramming into it, but I never could because the Legion kept spawning in and just knocking me around, and no matter how many of their vehicles I destroyed, I could never catch up. The reality of it is, the only reason I passed that mission is because that main enemy I was supposed to be actually chasing crashed into enough civilian vehicles and skidded into like the wall enough to destroy their own damn vehicle. When I got a mission complete screen, the vehicle wasn't even on my screen. So that can be very frustrating, and some of the enemies are painfully difficult. I feel like the difficulty in this game ramps up way too quickly. So on to the controls. Actually, the controls work, for the most part, very well. I didn't run into too many problems where I felt like the controls weren't working, although there were a few times where I was definitely hitting buttons to do my special move or my super move and it didn't trigger for some reason. But that didn't happen enough to really ruin anything or get me killed. I got killed plenty on my own because, like I said, the difficulty ramps up. That having been said, the shooting, the moving, I think it all works very well. The triple jump actually works well. I think basically a lot of the things they do in this game work very well for what they're trying to do. The driving is pretty good. It's okay. Let's go with okay. It's definitely the best driving that this company has put into a game, but it's also not the best driving I've ever had in a game like this. Lastly, there are the graphics, and I've got to say, graphically I really enjoy this game. It's obviously not a hyper-realistic game. It's very stylized. It's not meant to be a realistic game. It's meant to be very cartoony, and it does a great job capturing that from the world they've built to character design. Hell, even the actual cutscenes are all done in actual like animation. The opening cutscene itself, which I loved, like harkened back to like the early 90s cartoons. It was like an opening for an early 90s Saturday morning cartoon, and I loved that. A lot of the stuff in this game is just visually kind of wacky, but it fits in the world that they're building, and in reality, since this does take place in the Saints Row universe, if you've played Saints Row 3 or 4, you understand how wacky that universe can be, so this actually makes a lot of sense. So overall, what I'm gonna say is I did enjoy this game. I'm not gonna say this is the best game out there right now, but if you are looking for an open world, kind of off the wall game, just something to fill the time, I definitely think this is worth picking up. If you're a Saints Row fan, this is worth picking up. Just don't expect Saints Row out of it. I don't have a lot to add to that. I don't have a lot of caveats for this game because while I definitely enjoyed it and I'm glad I picked it up, I can't say that I'm like madly in love with this game. Okay, so in the comments below, why don't you tell me what is your favorite Saints Row game? As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share, subscribe. Have a good one.